Lo, the glory of the kings of the people of the Spear Danes in the days of old we have heard tell, how those princes did deeds of valor. Oft shield sheafing robbed the hosts of foemen, many peoples, of the seats where they drank their mead, laid fear upon men. He who first was found forlorn, comfort for that he lived to know, mighty grew under heaven, throve in honor, until all that dwelt nigh about, over the sea where the whale rides, must hearken to him and yield him tribute. A good king was he. That, my friends, is the opening handful of lines from J.R.R. Tolkien's translation of Beowulf. So this says here, quite clearly, a translation and commentary, which is part of the reason why this is so thick. And then it also includes, together with Select's Spell. And this is put together by Christopher Tolkien. So the important thing to remember about this is that this is not something that Tolkien had ever imagined would get published. So this is, I imagine if he had been wanting to put out a translation of Beowulf for the public, it would not look anything like what we have here today. And the reason why I think that is because he always tinkered endlessly with what he was working on. He is famous for getting back final proofs, final copies of something that's about to go to print. And he'd send it back with notes on the document of things that he's reconsidered and you know, maybe we should go this way with this passage instead. He did that with The Hobbit, with The Lord of the Rings. He endlessly tinkered with what he was writing on, which is part of what makes his world so wonderfully rich and vast and full of depth. But it also makes things never really see the light of day, because they never really fully get finished. That's why we never got a Silmarillion, for instance, published in his lifetime. I don't know that he ever would have gotten to a point where he would have been content with that. And I feel the same way about Beowulf. For a lot of the same reasons. With Silmarillion, these were the stories of the First and Second Age primarily that built the foundation that The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings rested upon. So this was the mythology, not just for Middle-earth, but he set out to do a mythology for England, because England didn't really have anything like that, and he always was envious of that. He wanted them to have their own mythology and things like that. And so it was a foundational text on what he was working on. In the same way, Beowulf was a foundational text for him. He was very, very heavily predominant in the critical area for Beowulf. He wrote an essay that was just a landmark essay, The Monsters and the Critics, which was originally a lecture and then became an essay. And if I remember, I will put a link to it down below so you can check it out for yourself. It was groundbreaking. It shone a new light on how to interact with the text of Beowulf. And it is absolutely magnificent. It is wonderful. Even if you don't have a strong background in Beowulf or Anglo-Saxon studies, just being able to read the mind behind the things that he puts together and the ways he presents things is just beyond wonderful. And the reason why I'm saying all of this is to lead into this translation is not a great translation for Beowulf. There are far better translations out there that are far more readable. The one that we're doing this, well, I'm like a week and a half behind, but week 2. So the Michael Alexander translation that is in the Penguin Classics is far more readable than this Tolkien translation. Micah, in his own video, Micah Cummins, I'm reading this along with Micah Cummins and Steve Donahue. Forgive me. I always forget to do those basic things like that. But that translation is far more readable. And I think a big part of it is because Tolkien was so enmeshed in Beowulf, both as a scholar and as someone who just genuinely appreciates it, that he goes through a lot with the text. He's a philologist. He is a lover of languages. He delves into those. And you can see that on full display in the commentary included in here, which is the reason to buy this volume right here. That is the best part of this book, is the commentary that is in there. And it is more commentary in this book than anything else. More than Beowulf and Selig-Spell and the Lays of Beowulf. And I'm pretty sure the introduction preface, also all included. All of those have a smaller page count than the commentary in here. The commentary is the best part of this book. The unfortunate thing about the commentary in this book is it does what I hate. Okay? So you have the text. There's no notations. There's not even anything indicating there's something at the end. So you go to the commentary, and it's going to tell you which lines this is going to be about. So here I'm on page 204. Okay, well, I need to go to lines 288 through 496. Okay, well, that means I've got to go all the way back here if I want to see the relevant passage to put it in context. And then I'm doing lots of flipping back and forth. I hate that. I absolutely hate doing that. It makes me less likely to delve into that commentary, those notes, when a text does that. But that's as much a me thing as anything. But the commentary in here is first rate, if you can go through it. And far more interesting than his translation of Beowulf is Selig-Spell, which stems from a passage within Beowulf itself. And it's essentially Tolkien's envisioning of towards, about the 2/3 mark of the book, there's a part where it mentions that they're telling stories about this. And so this is basically a recounting, but instead of Beowulf, it's like Beowulf and things like that. Instead of Unferth, it's Unfriend. The names have been slightly modified. But it recounts Beowulf and his experience with Grendel, who's renamed Grinder, and Grendel's mother. And it's just magnificent. It's phenomenally fascinating to see his imagining of that. And then at the very end, there's 2 versions of a poem, the Lay of Beowulf, which are absolutely delightful. Again, taking the main essence and distilling it down into a new way of sharing that information. And I love those so much. And I find a lot of value in that as well. But Tolkien's translation itself is not great. It's not bad. It's probably extremely accurate in a lot of the things. His decision to do it into prose rather than poetry is surprising to me, considering how much he was an Anglo-Saxon scholar. And, we have evidence that he could do poetry really well for translation. See Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl, Sir Orfeo. Those are all excellent translations, ones I want to revisit. Very much inclined to do that in June as part of the Ancients-a-thon, is to pull out those 3 Tolkien translations in that little skinny volume and give those a read. On occasion, he still has the alliterative verse still in essence in here. And you heard a little bit of it there in the beginning there. There were a couple of parts where you could hear. So you have the repetition of consonants. Laid fear upon men, he who first and was found forlorn. You have that repetition of the F sound in there. And Anglo-Saxon poetry did a lot of alliterative verse. And I absolutely love the alliteration that goes through. And it gives it a nice cadence, a nice rhythm as you're going through. It's not written in a specific meter or rhyme scheme, but it has that nice beat, that rhythm because of it. And so much of his lacks that. And to mention that his translation puts this at, I think, 2,700 lines, something like that. It is... Gotta get past all these things here. Extra stuff. Yeah, so 2,665 lines. For reference, this, not counting the introduction and preface, which are probably in here, which I could probably... So this right here is Beowulf. This part between my fingers. So introduction, preface. We've got a lot that is not those. And then to also put it into context, here is commentary. So you can see there, it's a very, very big chunk. So because he went into prose, it throws off the line count along the way. I don't know for certain whether that's he left out big chunks or if it's just because it being in prose, obviously you can fit more per line at times. And so it doesn't fit nearly as nice or neat as the over 3,000 line poem would. Which makes it a challenge if you're trying to compare this to other translations, because you can't really do a 1-to-1 ratio. And so, all that to say, the Tolkien translation, it's definitely worth a read. I'm keeping it in my collection for sure, for the commentary, Selig Spell, and the Lay of Beowulf at the end, if for nothing else. I don't know how often I'll reread his translation of Beowulf. I have at least one other that I know I love more on my shelf, and that's the Seamus Heaney. And I would say that even, it's going to pain me to say this, even the Maria Devana Headley translation is a little more readable than Tolkien's. I have issues with some of her choices in translation. But I understood her thought process behind it. And we don't get any of that because this was compiled after Tolkien's death, not at Tolkien's behest, not he had no plans for it. So we miss any of that reasoning thought process, and it's more speculation by Christopher Tolkien. And I love what Christopher's done. I love that we have access to this. I just don't think it's the translation that Tolkien would have published if he had set out to publish one in his lifetime. So there you go. There's my chat on the first of 4 translations of Beowulf that we're going to be talking about. I hope soon to get the next one up, so that maybe this weekend I can actually get the Burton Raffle one and be lined up for once with Micah and Steve on making videos about these translations. I didn't realize that they were going to be talking about the first translation that very first weekend, which was like 2 days into the month. I'd have a week for each, so either way I'm still behind. So there we go. I'm filming in a new location, mostly to get away from the sump pump sounds. So let me know, does it sound okay in here in terms of lighting and the sound? Do you not even notice the sump pump in the other location? If this location does become favorable, I'll probably hang a Tolkien map or 2 up behind me, try to block out some of the very unfinished background. But otherwise, I'm testing this out. I'll probably do a couple videos in here and see how it goes. So let me know. And thank you for watching. I will catch you later.